When my daughter was dying, I begged my wealthy parents for help. They said no, then spent 5 times the amount on my sister's birthday party. They said they couldn't afford to save my little girl. Hey besties, kindly take a moment to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you. Now back to my story. My name is Rebecca Collins and I am 34 years old. I live in a small apartment on the edge of Portland, Oregon with my 7-year-old daughter Lily. Life has never been easy, but until last spring I believed love could survive even the harshest storms. I was wrong. Lily had always been full of light. She was the kind of child who drew rainbows on napkins and taped them to the fridge, who'd kiss my forehead after I came home from the hospital after a long shift. But one afternoon everything changed. She fainted in the middle of her school's playground. When I got the call, my body went cold before my mind could catch up. I sped through the rain, praying under my breath, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. St. Mary's Children's Hospital, Dr. James Parker met me with a grave expression. "Rebecca," he said softly, guiding me into his office, "we found a growth pressing against Lily's heart. It's operable, but she needs surgery within 2 weeks. The total cost is about $30,000. $30,000. I could barely process the number. As a nurse, I earned enough to survive, barely, but not that. My savings were thin, my credit cards nearly maxed from last year's rent increase. Still, I nodded, promising him I'd find the money somehow. That night, after tucking Lily in beside me at the hospital, I sat in the hallway, staring at my phone. My thumb hovered over my parents' number. My stomach tightened. We hadn't spoken much in months, not since they'd made it clear that I'd chosen a difficult path by becoming a single mother after my ex-husband walked out. But they were still my parents, wealthy, retired, comfortable in their sprawling suburban home. Surely they would help. When I called, my mother, Agatha Collins, answered. Her tone was smooth, polite, like she was answering a business call. "Rebecca, it's late. Is something wrong?" "Mom," I said, my voice trembling. "It's Lily. She collapsed today. The doctors found a tumor. She needs surgery soon. They said it'll cost about $30,000. There was a pause. A long one. I could hear the faint ticking of a clock in their living room. "Oh, Rebecca," she finally said, "that's dreadful. But surely there are payment plans or government programs you can apply for." "I've looked," I whispered. "There's nothing fast enough. Mom, please." I wouldn't ask if it wasn't life or death. Another silence. Then my father, Charles, came on the line. His voice was low and firm. "Rebecca, you've made your choices. You walked away from our help years ago because you wanted to do things on your own. We're not a charity." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Dad, I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for my daughter's life." He sighed heavily. "You know we're planning something big for Vanessa's birthday next month. The funds are tied up right now. Maybe later." "Later." Cut in, my voice cracking. "She doesn't have later, Dad." But he'd already gone silent. Agatha came back. Her voice softened just enough to sound rehearsed. "We love Lily, dear, but you have to be responsible. We can't always fix your problems." My breath caught. "This isn't a problem, Mom. It's her life." When she hung up, I sat staring at the phone until the screen went black. My heart felt like glass, cold, cracking under pressure. I pressed my forehead against the wall and cried, the kind of silent cry that burns your throat. The following days were a blur of desperate calls, to charities, to friends, even to my church. I sold my car, my jewelry, anything that could raise funds. But every time I calculated, I came up short. Lily's condition worsened. Her skin grew pale, her breathing shallow. Dr. Parker called me aside one evening. "Rebecca, we're running out of time. I can hold the team a few more days," but he didn't finish. He didn't need to. I thought about my parents' words, how casually they dismissed me. $30,000 to them was pocket change. They owned 2 homes, 3 cars, and spent more on vacations than I made in a year. Yet they couldn't help their only grandchild. I tried again, one last call. This time, my sister Vanessa answered. Her laughter rang in the background, music, chatter, clinking glasses. Becca. Hey, what's up? I'm at the event planners. Mom's finalizing the theme for my birthday bash. It's going to be insane. Her words stabbed deeper than she knew. Vanessa, I said quietly, Lily's dying. She needs surgery. Can you please talk to Mom and Dad? Just 30,000. Please. There was a short pause. Then she sighed dramatically. Becca, you know how they are. They've already spent months organizing this party. They're stressed enough as it is. Maybe start a GoFundMe or something. People love a good cause. I hung up without a word. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. That night, I sat by Lily's bedside, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. Her fingers were curled around her stuffed bunny, worn and faded from years of love. She stirred, eyes half open. Mommy, she whispered weakly, am I going to be okay? My throat closed. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and forced a smile. Of course, sweetheart. Mommy's right here. But as she drifted back to sleep, I broke again. I begged God in whispers, begged the universe, begged anyone who would listen. 2 days later, I got an email from my parents. Just one line. We're sorry, Rebecca. We hope things work out. No offer. No compassion. Just a digital dismissal from the people who'd raised me. That night, the monitors beside Lily's bed beeped faster. Nurses rushed in, voices rising. I stumbled back, heart pounding as they worked on her tiny body. I remember Dr. Parker's voice calling my name, but I couldn't move. All I could see was her small hand slipping away beneath the bright hospital lights. When it was over, I sat in silence, numb, staring at the lifeless stillness of my daughter. The world outside kept turning, cars passing, laughter echoing faintly from the street below, but inside, everything stopped. And in that frozen moment, one thought burned through the fog of my grief. My parents could have saved her. Days later, my parents host my sister's extravagant birthday party, spending 5 times what could have saved my daughter's life, and my world collapses. The days after Lily's death felt like wading through fog, thick, suffocating, endless. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. The walls of my apartment seemed to close in on me, pressing down with the weight of everything I had lost. I'd thought grief would come as tears, but it came as silence, long stretches of it, heavy and unbearable. Her toys still sat in the corner, untouched. Her tiny shoes lined the hallway, facing the door like they were waiting for her to come back. I couldn't bring myself to move them. Every time I tried, my hands trembled too much to touch anything. Dr. Parker called me twice, his voice gentle. Rebecca, he said the last time, I just wanted you to know you did everything you could. But I hadn't. I knew that. 'Cause somewhere, miles away, people who claimed to love us were clinking champagne glasses and booking florists. The funeral was small. A few co-workers came, some neighbors, no one from my family. My parents sent white roses and a card with their initials printed neatly at the bottom. They didn't even come to say goodbye. I stood alone beside Lily's coffin as they lowered her into the ground, the cold wind cutting through my coat. I remember whispering, I'm sorry, baby. I tried. The morning after the funeral, I woke to the sound of laughter on my phone. Vanessa's social media feed was flooded with videos, balloons, a 3-tier cake, champagne fountains. She stood in a glittering gold dress, blowing kisses to the camera as guests shouted her name. Happy 30th, Vanessa. You deserve the world, someone screamed in the background. I scrolled further and saw my parents. My father in his tuxedo, smiling proudly beside my mother, Agatha, who glowed in a silver gown. There were fireworks bursting behind them, a live band performing on stage, and a caption that made my chest tighten. Nothing but the best for our golden girl. A night to remember. The date on the post stopped me cold. It was the night before Lily's funeral. $30,000. That's all it would have taken. Yet they'd spent 5 times that on champagne, decor, and a rented ballroom. I wanted to believe it was some cruel mistake, that maybe they hadn't realized what they were doing, but they had. They had known. And they'd chosen a party. That night, I sat on the kitchen floor with Lily's photo in my lap, tears streaming down my face. I whispered her name until my voice cracked. Anger rose like heat under my skin, fierce and raw. I had lost my daughter, and my parents were celebrating under chandeliers. A week later, I drove to their house, not to seek comfort but answers. Their mansion stood as it always had, neat hedges, white shutters, the smell of fresh paint. As I pulled into the driveway, my stomach churned. Agatha opened the door. Her expression froze the moment she saw me. "Rebecca," she said, adjusting the pearl necklace around her throat, "you should have called first." "I did," I said quietly. "You didn't answer." My father appeared behind her, holding a cup of coffee, calm as ever. "We weren't expecting you," he said. "Is everything all right?" "Lily's gone," I said, my voice trembling. "She died because I couldn't afford the surgery. Because you wouldn't help me." For a moment they said nothing. Then Agatha stepped back slightly, eyes darting away. "We sent flowers," she murmured. "We thought it would be best to give you space." "Space?" I laughed bitterly. "You had space for a party. You had money for fireworks and champagne, but not your granddaughter's life." My father's tone hardened. "Now, Rebecca, don't twist things. It wasn't that simple." "Yes, it was," I shouted, my voice echoing off the marble hallway. "You made a choice. You chose Vanessa's birthday over your dying granddaughter. Don't you dare pretend otherwise." Agatha flinched but said nothing. My father turned away, muttering, "You always did dramatize things. This isn't the time to blame us for your misfortunes." The words hit like a slap. I stared at them, at these two people who'd given me life yet showed no trace of humanity. My breath shook as I whispered, "I hope someday you understand what you've done." Then I walked out, leaving the front door wide open behind me. 4 months after that, I lived in a haze. The hospital bills piled up, the world kept spinning, and I kept surviving because that's all I knew how to do. I took extra shifts, moved apartments, and eventually found a small support group for grieving parents. But grief, I learned, never really leaves you. It just changes shape. Some nights it was quiet, like a shadow sitting beside me. Other nights it screamed, replaying every moment, every plea, every unanswered call. One evening, about a year later, I ran into an old colleague at a cafe. She mentioned she'd catered Vanessa's birthday party. My stomach turned as she described it, the ice sculptures, the rented orchestra, the designer dresses. "It must have cost over $150,000, she said casually. $150,000. I thanked her, finished my coffee, and walked out into the cold evening air. The city lights blurred through my tears. That was the moment I made myself a quiet promise. I would never need them again. I started saving aggressively, working every overtime shift I could get. Slowly, painfully, I rebuilt my life. I earned promotions, moved to a better apartment, and poured my heart into volunteering at the same children's hospital that once housed Lily. Each small victory felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Years passed. I didn't hear from my parents, and I didn't reach out. But every birthday, every empty December morning, I lit a candle by the window for Lily. And as the flame flickered against the glass, I'd whisper, "You mattered, my darling. You always mattered." I thought I'd buried the past, sealed it away with her memory. But life has a cruel sense of timing. 'Cause one ordinary morning, 5 years after Lily's death, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Rebecca," Agatha said, her voice trembling for the first time I could remember, "your father's business collapsed. We've lost nearly everything. We need your help." I stared at the phone in silence, my heart pounding, as the ghost of my daughter's laughter echoed faintly in the back of my mind. When I heard my mother's voice again after 5 long years, it was like a ghost had slipped through the phone line. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. The sound of her breath on the other end pulled me back into a version of myself I had buried deep, the desperate woman who once begged her parents to save her child. "Rebecca," she said again, her tone small, uncertain. "Your father's not well. He had a mild stroke last month. The business is gone. We sold the house in Lakewood. We don't know what to do." Her words drifted into the air, searching for sympathy that wasn't there. I leaned against my kitchen counter, staring at the photo of Lily that hung on the wall. Her soft smile, her missing front tooth, her eyes bright with a joy I would never see again. "Why are you calling me, Mom?" I asked quietly. There was a long pause. "Because," she said finally, "you're the only one left who can help. Vanessa moved to Los Angeles last year and she's been struggling with debt since the divorce. Your father and we just need somewhere to stay for a while. Maybe you could lend us some money until we get back on our feet." Her voice trembled, almost pleading. For anyone else, that tone might have softened me. But all I could hear beneath her words was the echo of that night, the quiet refusal, the cold dismissal. "We're not a charity." I swallowed hard, choosing my words carefully. "Mom," I said, "do you remember what you told me when Lily needed surgery?" Agatha's voice faltered. "Rebecca, please don't bring that up. We've all suffered enough." Suffered. The words slipped out of my mouth, sharp and bitter. "You suffered? I buried my child because you couldn't part with money you spent on champagne and fireworks." "Rebecca," she whispered, "I know we made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I interrupted. "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday, not letting your granddaughter die." The silence stretched long and heavy. I could almost hear her breathing, could almost imagine her sitting in whatever small apartment she now lived in, the taste of regret finally on her tongue. "Your father's very ill," she said softly. "He asks about you. He wants to see you before it's too late." I felt my throat tighten, but I pushed the feeling down. "I can't do that," I said. "Not now. Not after everything." When I hung up, I stood still for a long time, staring at my reflection in the kitchen window. I barely recognized the woman looking back, older, steadier, harder. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain tap against the glass. For years, I'd imagined this moment, the day my parents would finally understand what it meant to lose everything. I'd thought it would feel triumphant, but it didn't. It just felt empty. The next week, my sister Vanessa called. Her tone was more dramatic than sorrowful. "Becca, Mom's not doing great," she said. "They're living in a rental now, small place near the highway. Dad's health is getting worse. You should at least check on them." It's what Lily would have wanted. That name, my daughter's name on her lips, felt like an intrusion. "Don't use her memory to guilt me," I said. "I'm not," she replied quickly. "I just thought you'd want closure." "Closure?" I repeated softly. "You can't get closure from people who never opened their hearts to begin with." After that call, I didn't answer again. Weeks turned into months and life went on, as it always does. I continued working at the hospital, mentoring new nurses, volunteering at the children's ward. Sometimes I'd meet mothers who reminded me of myself 5 years ago, tired, frightened, holding on to hope with trembling hands. I helped them however I could, quietly paying bills or organizing fundraisers under anonymous names. It was my way of rewriting the past, one family at a time. But grief has a strange way of resurfacing when you least expect it. One December morning, I was decorating a small Christmas tree in my apartment. The radio hummed softly in the background, and the scent of cinnamon filled the air. For a fleeting second, I imagined Lily there beside me, hanging her favorite pink ornament. I smiled sadly. Then, out of habit, I lit the small white candle I always kept on the windowsill. Her candle. As the flame flickered, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Mom passed away this morning. Vanessa." I froze. The world seemed to slow down. I read the message again, but the words didn't change. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't catch. I just stood there, numb. For a long moment, I watched the candle burn, the wax slowly melting down its sides. Then I whispered, barely audible, "Goodbye, Agatha." I didn't go to the funeral. I couldn't. I knew it would be full of whispers, pitying glances, and rehearsed tears. Instead, I spent that day sitting by the river where Lily used to feed ducks. The water shimmered beneath the pale winter sun, quiet and endless. I let the wind carry my thoughts away, the anger, the pain, the memories I could no longer bear. For years, I had wanted them to feel what I felt: loss, helplessness, regret. Now they did. And somehow it didn't heal anything. It only reminded me how grief has no winners. That night, as I stood before Lily's candle again, I whispered, "They're gone now, sweetheart. It's just us." A single tear rolled down my cheek, but there was peace beneath it, fragile, faint, but real. Days later, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from a lawyer representing my parents' estate. They had left what little remained of their savings to Vanessa. None to me. Not a word, not a note, not even an acknowledgement. I laughed softly when I read it. Not out of bitterness, but understanding. They had lived their lives chained to appearances, to pride, to favoritism, and even in death they couldn't let it go. That night, I tore the letter in half, tossed it into the fireplace, and watched it burn. The flames curled around the edges, bright and consuming, until all that was left were ashes. I looked at Lily's photo again, her eyes bright and full of wonder. "We're free now, baby," I whispered. Truly free. Past had finally lost its hold. Time has a way of smoothing even the sharpest edges of pain, though the scars never really disappear. It had been nearly 8 years since Lily died, and 2 since my mother's passing. I was now 42, head nurse at St. Mary's, running community outreach programs and training new recruits. Life had settled into a quiet rhythm: work, home, volunteer work, and occasional laughter shared with friends who'd become my chosen family. Every morning, I walked past the hospital's children's ward and whispered a silent promise to Lily. Her photo still hung in my office, tucked between certificates and letters of gratitude from parents I'd helped. I didn't need applause, their smiles were enough. Some nights, when the halls went still, I'd sit by the window in my office and think about the road that had led me here. Grief had carved something fierce in me, resilience perhaps, or maybe just a refusal to ever feel helpless again. I'd built my life from ashes, piece by piece, and I was proud of what I'd become. Then one evening, just as I was finishing paperwork, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in years. Vanessa. For a moment, I almost ignored it. But curiosity, or maybe old habit, made me answer. "Becca," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's been a while." "It has," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "What's going on?" "I wouldn't call if it wasn't important," she began. "I'm in trouble." "Real trouble." I leaned back in my chair. "What kind of trouble?" There was a sigh, then the sound of distant traffic behind her. "I made some bad investments. The influencer brand I launched collapsed. I'm behind on rent. Credit cards are maxed out. I tried everything, loans, sponsors, but no one's helping." I said nothing. Finally, she added, "I thought maybe you could help me out. Just until I find my feet again. You're doing well now, right?" Her words stung, not because of what she asked, but because of how casually she said it. Like the years between us, the silence, the betrayal, all of it had evaporated. "I am doing well," I said slowly. "But that doesn't mean I owe you anything." "Becca, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I've lost everything. Mom and Dad are gone. You're all I have left." I looked out the window at the reflection of city lights against the glass. My heart tightened, but not with pity, just clarity. "Do you remember what you told me when Lily needed surgery?" She hesitated. "Rebecca, that was years ago. I was young, stupid. You told me to start a GoFundMe, I said quietly. You were laughing at a party while I sat in a hospital begging for my child's life. I know, she whispered. And I'll never forgive myself for that. Please, Becca, I'm not asking for 30,000. I just need a little help, a few thousand to cover rent. Her voice trembled now, genuinely desperate. A part of me wanted to hang up, but another part, some fragile human part, stayed. I can't, I said after a moment. I can't go back there. I learned the hard way what your love costs, and I can't afford it again. She started crying softly. So that's it? You're just going to let me fall? I didn't let anyone fall, I said. You just never thought gravity applied to you. When I hung up, my chest felt tight, not from guilt but from release. For the first time, I realized that forgiveness didn't mean reopening the door. Sometimes it simply meant letting go without bitterness. 2 weeks passed before I heard from her again. This time, it wasn't a call but a letter, handwritten, shaky. She wrote about how lonely she'd become, how the people she once called friends had vanished the moment her money ran out. She said she understood now what it felt like to be desperate, to reach out and hear silence on the other end. I read it twice, then set it down beside Lily's photo. There was something poetic about the way life comes full circle, teaching the same lesson to different hearts. That night, I took a long walk along the river. The city lights shimmered on the surface of the water, just as they had the day I said goodbye to Lily. But this time, the air didn't feel heavy. I felt lighter, older, wiser, but lighter. A few months later, I got an invitation in the mail. It was from Vanessa again. A simple card with embossed letters. Charity dinner for pediatric cancer research, hosted by Vanessa Collins. For a long moment, I just stared at it, stunned. I hadn't expected that. Maybe she was trying to make amends in her own way, maybe not. Till I smiled faintly. Life had an odd sense of justice. I didn't go to the dinner, but I made a donation anonymously, enough to fund one child's surgery. Then I wrote a short note and mailed it to her address. Good things grow from pain when we let them. Keep doing better. R. Weeks later, I received a reply. It was just one line. You were right, Becca. I finally understand. I folded the letter and placed it in Lily's memory box, beside her drawings and the tiny pink bow she once wore in her hair. As I closed the box, I realized that somewhere along the way my pain had transformed into purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was healing. Every year after that, I sponsored a child's surgery in Lily's name. Each one felt like rewriting a single page of the story my parents ruined. Each one was a quiet act of defiance against the cruelty that once defined my world. And yet, deep inside, I knew this story wasn't done, not completely. Because every now and then, I'd still dream of my parents' house, the marble floors, the grand staircase, the echo of laughter during that birthday party. In those dreams, I'd walk through the empty halls, open the door that once led to their ballroom, and find only silence. It was a silence I had learned to live with. A silence that no longer haunted me but reminded me how far I'd come. And though I didn't know it yet, the final chapter of this story was already waiting at the edge of tomorrow. A knock that would test everything I had rebuilt, and the strength to finally shut the door for good. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when I heard the knock. Not the gentle kind of knock you'd expect from a neighbor or a delivery driver. This one was urgent, heavy, almost trembling. I'd just brewed tea and was halfway through grading reports from the new interns when the sound came again. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. My weekends were sacred, the one time I allowed myself peace. But something about the persistence drew me to the door. When I opened it, my heart stopped. Standing there, drenched from the rain, was Charles Collins, my father. His once imposing frame had thinned. His silver hair, once neatly brushed, now clung to his forehead in disarray. Proud man who once walked into parties like he owned the world now looked small, fragile, almost lost. "Rebecca," he said quietly. His voice cracked. I didn't know where else to go. For a moment, I couldn't move. Memories surged like a wave. Lily's hospital bed, my mother's cold refusal, his silence, the birthday laughter echoing in my ears. I gripped the doorknob tightly, grounding myself. "What are you doing here?" I finally asked. He hesitated, eyes dropping to the floor. "I'm not well. I had a stroke a few months ago. The business collapsed. The house was sold. Vanessa's trying, but she can't take care of me. I thought," he paused, swallowing hard. "I thought maybe you could help." The words hung between us like fog. Help. The same word I had once begged him for. "Do you remember when I came to you?" I asked quietly. "When I was crying in your living room, begging you to help me save my daughter?" He nodded slowly, rain dripping from his coat. "I remember. And you told me you couldn't afford it because you'd already spent too much on Vanessa's birthday." He winced, looking away. "I was wrong. I know that now. Agatha, your mother, she convinced me it was the right thing. I didn't question her. I thought we could fix things later. But later never came." A bitter laugh escaped my throat. "You're right about that." He reached out, trembling. "Rebecca, I've lost everything. Your mother's gone, my health is gone, and I've had years to think about what I did. I can't undo it, but please, please don't shut me out." For a long time, I just looked at him. The rain poured harder, soaking his coat. His hand shook as he tried to steady himself against the doorframe. And in that moment, I saw not the man who ruined my life, but the broken shell of him, the price life had demanded for his pride. But forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. I took a deep breath. "I don't hate you, Dad. Not anymore. I used to, for a long time. But I realized hate keeps you chained to the past, and I've already served my time." His eyes watered. "Then let me in. Please, Rebecca. I just need a place to rest for a while." The air between us grew heavy. The smell of rain, the sound of thunder, the echo of every no I'd once heard. And then, with quiet finality, I said, "No, Dad. Not this time." His lips parted slightly, disbelief flooding his face. "I can't let you in," I continued softly. "You taught me that love without compassion is empty. You had your chance to show me mercy, and you chose pride. I built my life without you, with the same strength you refused to lend me. And now I have to protect that peace." Tears mixed with the rain on his cheeks. "You're my daughter." "I am," I said. "But being your daughter cost me everything once. I won't let it cost me again." He opened his mouth to speak, but the words never came. The weight of silence pressed down, and slowly he lowered his gaze. I stepped back and gently closed the door. The sound of it shutting echoed through the house, not harsh, not angry, just final. For a moment I stood there, hands still on the doorknob, heart racing. Then I exhaled, long and deep, as if releasing years of ghosts in one breath. Through the window, I watched him shuffle away, his figure fading into the gray drizzle. I didn't feel joy or triumph, just peace. Kind that comes when a story finally finds its last line. I turned and walked toward Lily's photo on the shelf. Her smile met me like sunlight through clouds. "We're okay now," I whispered. "It's over." That evening, I sat by the fireplace with my tea, listening to the rain. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was missing something. No ache, no bitterness, no unanswered question. Just warmth. Sometimes closure doesn't come with hugs or tears. Sometimes it's just the sound of a door closing, quietly, firmly, finally. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel for more stories, like and share to your loved ones.